very informed by a Western lens throughout my life. And so it was quite a powerful journey to look back through there, but to realise that that sense of longing and connection to Te Ao Māori was what was missing. Like in my early notes, my first admission, and certainly I can remember things from my admission in England, but my admission here in Aotearoa, my very first one, I turned around and said, I've come here to learn Te Reo Māori. That was on the first one of the early notes that they wrote about me. Yet nobody thought to link me into kaumātua queer and to understand some of that cultural trauma that comes from being disconnected from Te Ao Māori, but also of the only real Māori figure that I knew growing up was my nanny, and what the system has done in re-identifying her, not as this manda wahine that she was, re-identifying her as a psych patient, through the fact that it was very visible. She'd had that harm.
First of all, I just want to say thank you so much for taking your time and coming to my podcast. I really appreciate that. So I will let you start with introducing yourself the way that you would like to.
So I hail here from the beautiful Hokianga, Omanaya up there, and Karitu out in the Bay of Islands, and Te Araroa down on the east coast from the Hene-Rupe marae. I'm a mama of 3, so I've got 3 beautiful, amazing daughters. One of them lives in Wanaka. She's nearly, she'll be 30 coming up this year, and my middle daughter, Georgia, works with me here in Take Notice. And I've got my youngest baby daughter, Libby, as well. She lives in Auckland as well. Fur baby mama, so if my dog my Kerri decides she's going to make an appearance, she'll leap up and probably make a big racket.
So you are very busy. There's a lot going on with your life as well. You run Take Notice, which is you are the founder, and also you're a board member of TEPO, as well as a mental health foundation.
Yeah.
And it's a lot.
Yeah, it's really interesting because people often say, I know you're super busy, and it makes me feel quite bad sometimes when people go, I'm never too busy to catch up with our whānau. There are times where certainly things are quite chaotic, and it's something that I've been really mindful of this year of what's really important for me to be a part of, because there's so much we can be across, but what's really important, and you get to a stage, I guess, where those things that bring you into the sector are the things that you really want to concentrate on. So yes, I am the founder of Take Notice, as well as being wearing a couple of other different portai, and most recently our Tūmata Kōkiritia trust as well, like the trustee in there, but haven't quite put that one up yet. Take Notice came about in 2014. I was working in Counties Manukau at the time in the funding and planning team. I came in as a project manager, so it wasn't a lived experience-led role, but I'd come from lived experience positions. And in my time in some of the lived experience roles I did in Counties Manukau, a couple of people had said to me, you really should go contracting. And I just never really thought much about it. And I can recall one day being in sort of the, in our office areas around the cafe area, and they had this table with some of the flyers in the early days when Mental Health Foundation did the 5 Ways to Wellbeing. And there was one there on Take Notice. And I can remember thinking, wow, if I ever started up a business, then I would call it Take Notice. At the time, because it was like take notice of our voices, our experiences, in order to change it, transform the system. And and then I must have been about 13 papers into my Bachelor of Business, and I'd kind of put it on hold when I came into the DHB. And then the wonderful accountant there used to always come past me and say, when are you going to finish, Kerri? And so I thought, actually, I've done 13 papers, I'll finish it. And one of my last papers was a strategic management paper. And so while I was doing that, I actually wrote the vision for Take Notice. We had to write a business and write a business plan. And so I wrote it as part of my strategic management plan. I still have that version 2 assignment from it.
Wow.
Yeah, so I was looking across at that time of what was available, who was sort of doing things like that. And I can remember Mind and Body were one of the organisations that I'd sort of placed in this, one of the organisations that were doing that lived experience space. And there was another one as well, another couple. And then they did a big restructure in the funding and planning team that I was in. Very staunchly values-based, and how it was being restructured didn't quite align with some of my values. And I thought, actually, I was leading the project on mental health first aid, and Kwawa time, who had the program, said,
that's right,
will you come across here? So I contracted in there. That was one of my early contracts, as well as with the wonderful Naomi from Equip. So she brought me in on a 3-month contract, and it was the most beautiful, long enduring relationship. So so that's where I kind of started. I just thought, right, I'll just jump in, set up a business, and went out contracting.
But it sounds like the the higher power is saying, do this,
Yeah.
isn't it? Because it's from a flyer to your assignment to the opportunity presented itself. It's in a very timely manner. It doesn't sound like you have to go and purposely grab it. It's just scaffolding to a point where you are able to do it and make your vision become reality.
Yeah, absolutely. He tohu tērā, that is a sign, and everything has a whakapapa. And when we look back on those whakapapa, we kind of say, oh my gosh, it's not by accident that I came here. It's not by accident that I did this. I started my accounting degree in 2006, and it all sort of formed that ability to be able to establish a business and to be able to do it to where, touch wood, we have managed to survive, through, through some pretty tumultuous times.
Yeah, 12 years in making, that's pretty amazing for a business in any shapes and forms, to be honest. And
Yeah.
also, but what I really admire you is because you started as an accounting degree. So probably working in mental health wasn't even in your radar at the time.
Yeah, no, it's really funny because mental health was always in my radar.
Yeah. Okay.
So my nanny came through the institutes and spent most of her life under the Mental Health Act. And when I was in high school, my mum was doing her comp nursing course, and she was talking to me about sort of, being in King's Seat and things like that. And I started thinking about what had happened to my nana, what we witnessed as her mokopuna with the tardive dyskinesia from the medication, and all sorts of, nana lived in what they called the halfway houses for all of her life that I knew her anyway. And so at that age, I just turned around and said, right, that's it. I'm going to be a nurse when I leave school. I'm going to go and be a psych nurse because they were still doing straight psych nurse degrees. And I actually started trying in some of my studies just because I wanted to be a nurse. And then, I wasn't that flash at school. I didn't really like school. So I decided to leave, travelled overseas to England, and ended up in the psych hospital in England when I was about 20. And I can recall, at the time thinking, right, I'm here basically instead of doing the 3-year nursing degree, I'm here to learn it from the inside, which is quite ironic then to come into a lived experience position. So I was about 20 then. And when I came back to New Zealand, I thought I can't go and do mental health because, of course, having my own challenges, and I didn't think they'd let me be a nurse. So for all my life, really, from when I was a teenager, I always wanted to come in mental health. Into mental health. I just didn't know how I would get a foot in the door. So
Again, the higher power has its own plans. Like nursing degree is not for you, but I have another pathway and let you allow yourself to be part of that, isn't it? And I love that because I love the fact is you saw your nana, and even as a small kid, you have a sense of this is not right.
yeah.
This
Yeah.
is not the way that it should be.
Yeah, very much so. And it's very, very close to my nanny, and she is the person that guides me. Certainly, there are times where I do things, particularly now as I've gotten older and probably understood more, through a Te Ao Māori lenses. Yeah, I feel my nanny, and I feel my nanny kind of driving me and guiding me. Sometimes she gives me a little bit too much of a nudge.
You want her to back off as soon as like, Nana, I get a message, please.
Yeah, very much so. Certainly when I wrote my dissertation, I just felt her so much because
Wow.
I got such an insight into the system, and then just started realizing what had really happened to her from that real system harm space. And it was quite a challenging time, but also a really beautiful healing time for me too, to feel closer to her and telling my story. I'm telling her story also that she never got to tell. Yeah.
Would you like to share a little bit more? Because, I think it would be amazing. And I believe in Te Māori lens as well, not a Western biomedical mental health model. I think shit, the implication and also the injustice that have done to the people. Yeah.
Yeah, it's huge, my stuff, hey? Like when I really started understanding, I spent a lot of times when I was writing in tears, just realizing, the kind of layers of harm and the reinforcing harm. The system has so much power that it can keep reinventing itself and repositioning itself and re-legitimizing itself. And a lot of the time it's by using us as subjects. I think that was one of the most powerful things that hit me was that, through the way data is collected and framed, we are used as those subjects to legitimize tools that are actually really harmful,
Wow.
particularly for Māori. So for me, there was this real kind of, I guess there was a moment of, part of what I wrote about was, I guess, our identity of who we are. And I grew up
Mm,
with a beautiful Pākehā mum and an
mm,
incredible English stepdad. So I grew up very much in Te Ao Pākehā.
mm,
So very, very informed by a Western lens throughout my life. And so it was quite a powerful journey to look back through there, but to realise that that sense of longing and connection to Te Ao Māori was what was missing. Like in my early
wow.
notes, my first admission, and certainly I can remember things from my admission in England, but my admission here in Aotearoa, my very first one, I turned around and said, I've come here to learn Te Reo Māori. That was on the first one of the early notes that they wrote about me. Yet nobody thought to link me into kaumātua queer and to
Mm,
understand some of that cultural trauma that comes from being disconnected from Te
mm,
Ao, but also of the only real Māori figure that I knew growing up was my nanny, and what the
mm,
system had done in re-identifying her, not as this mana wahine that she was,
mm,
re-identifying her as a psych patient, through the fact that it was very visible she'd had that harm. But also, they disconnected us from her, and I didn't even realise she knew Te Reo Māori until I came up for her tangihana up here in the north.
wow.
So there's things like that that I looked through, but also I guess we weren't part of the mental health and
Mm,
addiction system prior to 1960, and then
mm,
suddenly now you look at our statistics, and all I've seen over the last I don't know how many years is these rising inequities in some
mm.
powerful ways with our people, and how the stigma and discrimination is real.
Yeah, I actually have someone from Caribbean, and she was talking about not fighting about decolonizations, but stand firm about knowing who we are. She highlighting when you only have one view and the other population or subpopulation, so that people are not in that dominant culture, then can become invincible. And and also like then they reframe things that they are not understood in a way that do more harm than good for another population, really, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, and that's certainly what I see through here. Like when I look back at my experience in England, it's quite heartbreaking, really, to think that 30 years ago I experienced a pretty
Mm,
nice, by comparison, journey through the system from what I've
mm,
experienced in Aotearoa. And certainly as I became more knowledgeable in Te Ao Māori and more
mm,
staunch on, understanding my rights, I came through the system harder. I think that's the thing that hit me, is just recognising how much the power pushes back when we start standing in our own rangatiratanga,
yeah,
that real,
yeah,
we don't want you to do this. So there's lots of things at play that happen through there, and just sort of sometimes I step back and I look inwards and I think, wow, you can see
yeah.
the way that structures are built, who has power to talk, who speaks on behalf of, how our whānau come through the system and the inequities, and it's quite a beast.
And it's all about control, isn't it? Because like when you push back, when you want to have a voice, people get scared. They want to stay with the status quo, even though they are wrong, but they still don't want to let it go. And I agree with you. And it's really very sad, even what's happening now with the political environment and all that. And feel just disgusting. Yeah.
Yes, real mummy times that we're going through at the moment. And, when you talk about that power and control, one of the things I recall is
Mm.
uh, one of the nurses saying to me during one of my admissions, she turned around and she said, "You know what your problem is, Kerri?" She said, "You're too intelligent and you know the system too well, and that scares the shit out of everyone here." Yeah, and I mean,
Wow.
she was right behind me and right beside me, and and lots of
Wow.
people. I was very lucky that there were some really staunch advocates, or else my life
Wow.
would have looked quite differently, because that power. I've never experienced such an oppressive power as what I experienced in my last
Wow.
admissions. It was quite significant. This whole, we're not having someone come in here. It's written all through my notes of, I'm incredibly litigious. No, I'm someone who knows the system, knows my rights, and
Yeah.
knows how people should be treated. And
Yeah.
it's
Wow.
traumatizing to watch our whānau being subjected to some of the things that they're being subjected to in these places. So,
Mm,
it's where you do see that whole
mm,
reinforced by tools such as Honos that, kind
mm,
of label us as dangerous. Some of these gasser risk profiles where one will say you're a risk because you look really violent, one will say you're just hoha, and quite rightly so. And then you have like the layers of it where the legislation supports that kind of practice, the medication. People have the power to write narratives around you and share narratives with people that come to your issue or your whānau that just make, in my case, your workplace, everything where you're just made out to be, somebody quite different from who you are. That it's quite a challenging thing to sit there and think, wow, I don't even know who I am in that. And that's nothing to do with a mental health challenge because I can remember everything. The power of how people can reframe and re-identify who you are. And that's the really harmful thing within our systems.
Wow. Can I ask you something? Because, where do you get that fire in your belly?
There's definitely a lot of fire in the fuku. I mean, it comes from...
I love it. I think that makes you who you are. Because to be honest, like the system is not easy to fight. Let's be honest. Like what you say is a beast. It's a monstrous. It's so... It's now bigger than any of us. It's ridiculous. So go back to that.
And it comes through my whakapapa, like I think of my nanny and, when I think about the harm that was inflicted on her, I know it's because she would have been challenging and she would have been pushing back. And she used to often sit there and she'd have this look in her eyes and she'd, unfortunately her hands had like this involuntary movement like this, but she'd have this kind of fierce look in her eyes and she was such a staunch wahine.
Wow.
Some of the times I remember with her of just how she was, she had this sort of presence. And I can imagine that that's probably why she had a really challenging part of the system. So when I first came in into the system in Aotearoa, I remember my mum saying to me, you can't fight the system from within, because my first experiences, I remember feeling my nanny and just recognising that some of the harm that was being inflicted on me had been inflicted on her. So that made me angry that, how dare you do this kind of stuff to my nanny? And I know that what she would have experienced would have been 10 times worse than what I'd experienced and what I was seeing around me. So, there's a big drive in there of she never had a voice. So as her mokopuna, I have that voice to activate for change or advocate for change. And I know she wouldn't have wanted this for me, where I'm at. So I kind of stand up, and that's part of where the fight comes from, but also for my girls. Intergenerationally, the system's had a huge impact on my whānau, and I don't ever want that for any of my mokopuna, or anyone's mokopuna, not just mine, but I get up and fight every day. Well, not figuratively and not always, but the fire's always burning in there of, this is bigger than me.
Yeah.
And I stand here in that kind of traversing the middle of both worlds of somewhere, hopefully breaking those cycles of harm for all of our whānau, really.
Can we talk a little bit more about your grandmother? I would love to hear a little bit more about who she is, because I felt like her essence is in you as well. So we're not just talking about a separation between her and you, but is that
Yeah, look, she was a really special lady, and I wish, I don't know, there's lots of times I wish she was around where I could sit down and talk to her about some of the things with it all, because Nana epitomised, what we talk about in Manaaki, that, she lived in this kind of not very nice places in some of these boarding houses, but you'd always go over there and Nana would have cooked or prepared a kai for about 30 people, and there'd be my brother and I going over there and we go, oh, Nana, we can't eat all that. Like food was really important to my Nana. She'd had all of this. She used to send us all like $5 for birthdays and things, and she would have had nothing. Like, when she passed away, there was literally a couple of suitcases or one suitcase of all of her belongings. But she would always be trying to sort of give us things and stuff like that. Nana, her sister, like she was brought down from the Hokianga at the age of 20. This was one of its, round the age of 20 were her early admissions into Kingseed and Carrington. And she had a number of them. So my father and my uncle and auntie were all whānau'd out into other communities, and they all ended up moving down to the South Island and living down there. So it was my mum and my stepdad who used to take us to see her a lot. And we used to take her into places in Ponsonby to have their fish and chips. And, Nana was always happiest when there was a kind of the kai was sitting in front of her. But I also have early memories as a child of my stepmum and father bringing her down to Aramoana when we'd gone down to stay with them as kids, and her being there and us all going out and getting cockles, and Nana would be sitting there, you know, encouraging us all to eat more and more cockles, and she'd just sort of sit there watching all of her mokopuna, you know, with this kind of intent look on her face. And I always knew she knew what had happened when I came back from England. I remember going out and seeing her, and she looked at me and I just looked at her, and I never said anything. But there was this sort of sense of feeling that she knew what had happened and I didn't need to say it. And when I was in hospital at one stage, I had rung her and spoken to her when I was in there as well. Which was, yeah, because then it got right around sort of the whānau down in the South Island and people ringing me and stuff. But yeah, she was special. She had a very, I don't know. Like I remember, you know, like I took Nana through all her chemotherapy when she was, not chemotherapy, sorry, radiotherapy. Like we'd been asked to go up to the hospital to say goodbye to her. They said she was passing away. And that this was it. We needed to say goodbye. So off we went up to the hospital, and I can remember sitting there and her saying to me, "You think I'm going to die, don't you, Kerri?" And I went, "No, Nana, we're just here, you know, just seeing you and seeing how you are." She survived for another couple of months. She kind of defied the doctors. And they asked me to go up there when they were giving her the news that, you know, there was nothing they could do, but they would work with radiotherapy for a while. And the doctor said to her, you know, this is it. There is nothing we can do. And she said, "That'll be all right." And he said, No, it won't be all right. And I said, no, I think what she's saying is she's okay with this. You know, she's accepted it. She's fine. Like that's where she's sitting at. And that's how I remember her. She was so, yeah, she'd been through a heck of a lot in her life. You know,
I agree. Yeah. I felt, as soon as you say, I felt sad, extremely sad, hearing that her life was deprived by the system.
Yeah.
Literally taking away. Yeah.
Yeah. Huge. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And that really hit me hard. I mean, like, we, as a system, we need to do better. We can't take away anyone's life just because we think we know better. And we're still not learning.
No, you're right. And that's part of where the fight comes from for me is, you know, I'm very blessed to have some privileging with a good education. I had a whānau that were there that were able to support me. I had a mum who was a nurse who knew the system well enough, you know, and I've had lots of friends and colleagues that I've met over the years. You know, Nana didn't have that back in those days. And there's lots of our whānau who still don't. So for me, there's this whole thing that we can sit here, think we're doing okay. And when I came back through the system and 2020, it was a heck of a jolt into reality. I thought we were doing all these wonderful things that were changing. And when I walked back through the doors and looked around and saw our whānau Māori, I was like, what the heck have you been doing for 12 years, Kerri? Because this is actually worse. And it was worse in 2020 than it had ever been prior. And that's really hard to sort of sit there and think. We think we're doing things sometimes by the little changes that we're making. All we're doing is moving deck chairs because the power not being disrupted enough of, you know, that's what's got to be dismantled, is that power that sits to do to people and to keep on doing to people, where we say, oh, look, we don't have indefinite treatment orders, but we keep rolling over compulsory treatment orders. You know, our whānau who are on them. And I guess the system's response nowadays in some of those respects is because, unfortunately, with the lack of resourcing and stuff like that, people have been left under the Act so that they actually get the support they need, which is really heartbreaking that you know, in order to provide the right care for somebody, I want to stay under there because I know that if I need support, I can get it quicker. And that's quite heartbreaking.
Do you see there will be ever solutions? Yeah,
look, I mean, I like to hope so, Ivan. Otherwise, it'd be really hard to get up and work in the system and try and do things, you know, that we are doing, because I do have to believe in that hope that we will make changes. And and to be fair, we have made some changes. I think there's, you know, I think some of the challenges of why the system is feeling like it's a bit like those inequities are rising in it. There's lots of multiple things that are, you know, that are, I guess, influencing some of that. You know, it's like the workforce shortages, the lack of investment in addiction and substance harm spaces, so that, you know, our whānau are trying to support whānau where they don't have the skills and knowledge. You know, so there's lots of multiple things, but I think there's got to be some really big changes in how the system rates and particularly around commissioning and funding, that, investments are into often solutions that aren't always going to make a difference and that aren't
Wow.
sitting in our communities. Like, that's the really heartbreaking issue. You've got to fund and invest in our communities properly for them to actually stand up and be able to do this, work in those kind of areas of the system. So, and the
Yeah,
education of our people. And knowledge is power. No,
I agree.
it's a huge, huge part of it. Our whānau have no idea, and the amount of whānau that I've supported, and while they've had people that are needing to access support or whatever, and they're there going, well, what would we do if we didn't have a Kerri here to support us to understand what are they even talking about? What does this even mean for my whānau member?
Wow.
All of that kind of stuff that, we don't really have those kind of people that are doing that or invest in programs that provide educational or mental health literacy for our whānau so they know, walk alongside us. So they're just as disempowered in accessing support as well as our tangata whai ora.
What you're saying, describing is they are facing a very different set of rule and regulation as well as scientific methods that are not familiar to normal humans. For people who never been in the system or first time encountered, everything is foreign because even the language itself is not something that they have heard of.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, if it wasn't for my mum, I would never have known. Like, when they first talked to me about coming out on a compulsory treatment order, I just wanted to jump at the opportunity. I'd had 5 weeks
Mm.
or 3 or 5 weeks, I don't know how long it was at that stage, in a space where it was awful. And I just wanted to be out of the hospital. And when they said, hey, look, we could do this. And I can remember saying to my mum, look, there's a section, 29 or 30, whichever one it is, that I can go on that means that I can come out and come back home. And she straight away said, you don't want that, Kerri. She said, if you take that, that means that they have the power to bring you back into hospital whenever they want to, and they will force you to have medication. You
Wow.
need to come out where that's not the case. And so ever since then, I've looked back and I'm very blessed that they've never managed to, despite the
Yeah.
system wanting to, put me on a compulsory treatment order, because that changes your life. Like, that's not just, I've never been on one, but when I look
Yeah.
at the whānau who have been on them, some of them for years, my nanny was on
Yeah.
one, forced medication while you're living in your own home. And
Yeah.
if you don't do as you're told, you get threats of, the
Yeah.
system putting you in hospital. It's not okay.
And I agree with you because I've never been putting one, but I know of people who had, and then it became like a I don't know what is the right word, like a black record, like that kind of became a very strong indications, and the psychiatrist can make decisions like, yeah, I believe because of this, and then they sign off the paper, things immediately change, and that person have no saying, almost similar to a criminal record that saying this person is unsafe.
Yeah.
That's what I get. It's like, once that person had that, everything became really hard to argue because then they like blacklisted in certain things. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm
Yeah.
I'm with you. Yeah.
And there's a real fear, and you actually, it's the stifling of people's potential too that happens with that. That I look at many
Mm.
of our whānau that I knew from my Te Kiti Pounamu days, and still know, of course, that were on compulsory treatment orders. And, like, their whole lives have been restricted and limited by the fact
Mm.
that, there becomes a little bit of a glass ceiling around you of what you can and can't do. And that's really yuck, and it's our whānau that are experiencing, that kind
Mm.
of stuff more so than anybody else. Um, yeah, so and like you said, the changing of narratives, that anything you say, it's really interesting that I was talking to a clinician recently that had been involved in my nursing, and they said, Kerri, I can remember, like, it being written through your notes that Kerri thinks she's this and this and this, and does this or whatever in the system, and it was perceived as part of my delusion, and and I can remember you, which it's not something I would usually do, but they said, I can remember you saying to me, look me up on LinkedIn because it's true.
Yeah.
And they said,
they thought you were deluded.
oh, yeah, like the amount of times that it's written through there of, just this is part of Kerri's kind of delusion or illness, is thinking that, she knows this, or she has this, or she's done this. And
Wow.
yeah, and it's written all through there that that I was a peer support and I was this, and I was like, and I don't want to take away from our peer support whānau. I've never worked specifically in a peer-to-peer role. I've done lots of peer support because we
Yeah.
just do,
Yeah.
but very informal context. So there were all sorts of things that are written in there, even in as much as, getting my daughters wrong, getting who was there wrong, all sorts of things like that. Yet the system's not held accountable for. You've got some fundamental factual things here that are wrong. This kind of
Yes.
says something about your lack of organisation and your lack of processes. But if I say one thing that you deem to be wrong, irrespective of whether it's right, it gives you more weight to pathologise it as part of a mental illness. And that's my personal experience of the system, is that everything was reframed into this. Yeah, this is part of this is part of that. So I'm very blessed to have a really good advance directive now that talks about who I am,
Awesome.
and that not to take things that I just naturally do as a symptom of mental health challenges, because that's, like to actually say Kerri likes to write with pen and paper. That's not mania. That's how Kerri is. That's how she processes.
Yeah.
Which has been really reaffirming of thank you for seeing me and seeing who I am, instead of, it's just easy to make me the problem and put it all down to a mental illness, rather than there are system issues that are actually creating this environment that is really unsafe for me. And as you said, I've got a natural fire in my belly. That doesn't change when I go in those places.
No. Actually, it get you more even fiery out, isn't it? It's like knowing. I mean, it's really sad because, again, there's in power and control. Someone hold the pens and believe that they can make a judgment even without truly knowing that person of who they are, simply because they have certain qualifications. And that's why sometimes I don't really even believe in institutions, like whatever that's, hold those people being accountable anymore, because I think they all equally shit.
Love your straight upness on that, Ivan.
Oh, it is. I don't know. I think as actually because I've been seeing counselors for many years, taking medication for many years, it didn't lead me anywhere. Like, not until last year something happened, then it really shifted to the perceptions about my mental distress and all that. But I always felt like a second-class citizen because of my mental distress, like whatever places I go. On one hand, people acknowledge my work, but on the other hand, people also kind of see me as a second class citizen. Like Ivan cannot go crazy. When Ivan go crazy, the whole organizations get panic. But when someone go crazy without a label before, and then it's okay. It's like, how is this work? I don't get it.
Yeah. I totally hear you. It's one of those really interesting things that I recall a colleague years ago where, somebody's saying, oh, you should have, it's a pity that this happened to you because you could have been a teacher. And they turned around and they said, well, actually, I do have a Bachelor of Education. There's almost the shock of, you've got this, it must be, that can't put you in the same category as someone like me. But we are normal human beings who have experienced something different, and it's not necessarily always fitting in nicely into this DSM model box. There's a lot of layers below it, and I do think there are lots of really good clinicians, particularly some of our psychiatrists that are coming through who will sit and hold both those knowledge bases quite well. You know what I mean? And they'll actually. Yeah, like I can't praise the last psychologist I've had enough. He was incredible to work with and incredibly, like very much around that, supporting me to have agency, to have a voice, listening, working with me on a plan that, because medication to me has a place for but as a PRN, of when things get really disruptive or, when I can't sleep or whatever, it shouldn't be used at kind of some of the levels we're using in inpatient settings. But it was really good because he also imparted knowledge. Like his role was to say, well, this is why you were getting so this, because it's not as good as this. And I'm like, why didn't anyone tell me that? Because just doses so high. So that transfer of knowledge is so important. Tell me a little bit about how your system works. Tell me about the medication you want to give me. Tell me about these things, and I'll tell you about me. And it becomes lovely reciprocal rather than transactional. You just do it or else, the not so good way of working with people, because we both have a place in there, but it's like share the power, the knowledge, share the power, and walk with us on the journey, because I don't believe that, the system has to be where if you're a responsible, the RC, the responsible clinician, where you have all that power and you don't share it. I think that's the fundamental. It's the pressure
mm,
off working in a blame culture, but also
mm,
alongside of us on the journey. And, and I've been blessed to have a couple, not as nearly as many as I would like, but a
mm.
psychiatrists in my time that have been really great at doing that. And certainly some of the nurses that I've worked alongside of, or that have worked alongside of me, I should say, because they're the ones that are working. I'm on the journey.
But I love what you just described. You're describing a effective relationships that is therapeutic. Like that's what people keep using. Then what and how it looks like. It look like just what you have described.
Yeah,
Like someone who hold that knowledge, share that knowledge with someone who experiencing it, and say how then I experiencing it for the person. And
yeah,
that's all about is not taking away that control then to say this is what you have to do. And that is when quite often things became a challenge because then that agency was taken away from the person. Then there's no negotiation, even though someone knew this is not working for me and then trying to get even further help because it's like one thing piling another. They already have things that they have to face with, and then now complicated by medication. It's like, how is that going to win?
that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And it's that thing of people understanding the power that they hold and how they use that and the instrumental impacts that can have on someone. Do you know what I mean? That you're there to
Mm,
actually provide care and support, not to
mm,
control. And, used to have some of those discussions with nurses who go, oh, but they're doing X, Y, and Z. You're not here to control their behaviour and personality. Oh, sorry. You're here
yeah.
to provide care and support for a person. And it flips it quite differently. Behaviour is a response often to environment, to people, to whatever is happening, and just kind of coming down hard on people and pushing
Mm,
them, this kind of power thing, don't do or else,
mm,
harmful. It's not helpful for anyone. And I think that's that stuff of just teaching people to be nice human beings.
yeah.
You don't need a degree to do that.
Yeah. Absolutely. And no one would like to end up in a unit where they cannot have any like freedom at all. I mean, like, isn't there a common sense? They were there because for a reason. Hearing your journey, Kerri, I mean, to do the work that you do, you bring a lot of yourself, your experience, which is
Mm.
so invaluable in the system to make the change. And so, where are you at right now in the space of it?
Yeah, I think after my last submission, I was very much about regrounding and recentering back to what's really important to me. So what I've been spending a bit of time doing is getting really clear on what things I can and can't work on, rather
Mm,
than just being kind of split across things. That I'm super passionate about a lot of things, and I'm at that stage in my life, particularly when I see that some things have gotten worse and they haven't shifted. It's become
mm,
very much where, okay, well, if, let's go hard or go home now. So the biggest areas for me that are kind of those passion areas are around the crisis end of the system.
mm,
They're around seclusion and restraint and
mm.
seeing really authentic change around that. Anything to do with kind of the mental health act and, that's the kind of stuff that really, yeah, it'll be what I
So,
keep working on until I see effective change, really, I guess.
do you want to talk about the website you just launched as well for that reason, and then probably give a little bit of overview of it?
Yeah, so Tūmata Kōkiritia is one of the most beautiful, if not the most beautiful kaupapa I've ever been part of. It came from our whānau. It's very much grounded in, it was one of those, when we talked about tohu earlier and how things just come together. Tūmata has what we would call the most incredible life force, or the most incredible Māori in it, that when anything starts happening in Tūmata, people come, things just happen, it just
Mm,
works. And we were very blessed to be supported by Nuku Te Ao to run a project around under this anti-stigma and discrimination around seclusion and restraint. Because of course we know it happens more for Māori than anyone. And they were just incredible to work with. That whole high trust, your communities, you know what you need to do. Here you go, just do it. So we were able to kind of sit as a rōpū and, big ups to the whānau that were part of that rōpū and coming on board and trusting the process. And we came together and, and it was kind of a healing process for us all. But we worked with Marcus the Sandman. So I took one of my experiences of seclusion and basically narrated through it while he drew what it felt like in the background. And it was quite powerful, like incredibly, quite emotional for a lot of people in there. Like we just asked people just to sit and be with it.
Wow.
We took them through that space, and then the kai whakamanawa rōpū, the whānau, who have also experienced seclusion, came alongside of me to finish it off, I guess, with our moi moi. So we took it from that kind of trauma space of this is what it feels like, brought them out into this is where we're standing up and leading, and this is what we see a healing system looking like. As a powerful way of, people can talk theoretically to what seclusion is. They understand there's lots of literature and research that says it's harmful, but to actually sit and feel it. And Marcus is incredible. Like he used sort of pororo, he used instruments, he used all sorts of things to bring this creation to life.
Wow.
And certainly the impact it had on whānau that were there and what they've kind of shared back as well was quite instrumental. So that was quite significant to be able to do that. And alongside of it, we wrote the manifesto, which was bringing together kind of a decade of work, predominantly under the Tikiti Pounamu, when I was in my Tikiti Pounamu days that we'd done around restraint and seclusion to, I guess, collate and bring all those whānau on board, because these things don't just start here. We all think we're the new brand fangled doing something. But actually, Tūmata has that whakapapa to he puna rangatira, which was the work done under Te Rau Matatini with the first conference in Orake. We weren't new in doing that. It's just the time shift. So it's really important to kind of put those place markers that we were in a space where we could bring it to life because this, Aotearoa, the right time, the right space. But all of that work is what informs it and is what kind of carries it into that space. So that's what the manifesto was a bringing together of that, as well as a call to action to say, enough's enough. Like our whānau Māori with lived experience of restraint and seclusion need to be a part of this work, and we need to be leading alongside of in this mahi. It's us that are being significantly harmed.
Yeah.
Alongside of, I don't want to diminish the fact that anybody, no matter where you come from, Māori, Tauiwi, Pākehā, or harm is harm when you experience restraint and seclusion. But we're coming from our tirohanga Māori, so it's, that's why we centre ourselves as Māori in that space. It's not to diminish the experiences of others. It's just like, actually, this is the only lens that we can come from, is what it's feeling like for us, and so positioning it there. So, that's our kind of call to action now. That one of the things I and be looking to do soon is around somebody said, the government needs to respond to this, and they do. It's not okay to dismantle Te Aka Whai Ora and go, we're going to still get equity and then have our seclusion rates go up to 6.6.
I agree. It's not right.
No,
it was so disheartening to see that happen, because they fight so hard to finally get there, and then we just see it being dismantled.
If they've done a great job of reducing inequities, I'd sit there quite humbly in that space and go, great, at least we're still seeing change and we're seeing reducing inequity. But we've actually seen those figures rise. When Maria first came out in 2015, and Hui, that was kind of the catalyst for Te Kiti Pounamu. That were almost three times. I think it was 2.7 times more likely. We are now 6.6. So a decade on, what's been done? We've invested millions into big agencies leading it.
Yeah.
We've invested millions into some of the work of other organisations, yet our figures are now 6.6, and it's easy to see why, because some of the things that people aren't naming in there is where the challenges is around. It's around discrimination and stigma and discrimination. You are marked, therefore I think you're violent. Even if you're not violent, if you're shouting at me, that means you're going to be aggressive and you're going to hit. All of these assumptions inform why we end up with people putting their hands on us more.
I can't remember her name. She did a PhD on depressions on men and the manifestations of Maori men who show out depressive symptoms. It's not by what has been described like Pākehā. They get angry and agitated, but those are the manifestation of depressive symptoms, because that's who I am as well. When I get anxious, I get outburst anger. I don't get that kind of cry, tearful high. I go opposite way. But that is my manifestation of anxiety and depressions, because I'm so agitated, I don't know how to work on my energy. And so if we only have one lens, believe how depression should be manifested, and then seeing another action as something else as aggressions, and then where is that lens? Like it lends to judgment, discriminations, and all that. And unfortunately, that's what the system have found. It's like they believe, when people look at psychologists being studied, majority of them are white people. They- like and then you can't call it scientific study. There's bias study. It's not even bloody science. Not everybody born equal. Not everybody being taught in this way. The solution is given back to the people
Yeah.
and not taking it away.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
right. That's the big thing, isn't it? That it's something I'm really, really staunch on in my own mahi is, I can be a strong ally in spaces, that you guide me on how that allyship looks, because I'm not going to step in your space and step in your lane. I will stand alongside of. But, my role is to sit here and go, how can I awhi and support without being the voice for you? Because I see so much of that. And particularly our rangatahi, that there is a lot of us Pākeke talking on behalf of rangatahi, and being able to kind of, how do we hold that, I guess, that authentic allyship? And same with us, same with any of our experiences. It should always be a lived experience of what, like we've genericized the term lived experience. Your lived experience, therefore you can talk on everything. Me into substance harm and addiction, I'm really clear about, why do you want me in this space? Because my own experiences aren't substance harm or addiction. So if they're really clear of, we want a different opinion, we want a different voice, we want your mental health, please, great, I can come in. But if you want me here to talk on behalf of whānau, I am not going to do that. And that's the same for anything, that if I don't have that personal experience, my key role is to find the whānau who have, and to step back and create the space for them to have a platform to talk with. And, or not platform's a bit of a naff word, but them to have on a mic, really. So that's kind of, I think, something that's fundamentally got to shift as well, is that everybody becomes an expert by listening to rhetoric and listening to all the click phrases. And because I can say what people think should be said, it makes me look like that. That's how people are starting to legitimize practice, which is a really concerning thing for me, is that, somewhere along the line, we're becoming this funnel filtering of the voices of people. And we've got to be really careful that we don't become a power construct as well, that actually diminishes our community voices, rather than be, an amplify. And amplifying doesn't mean being the megaphone for.
I love it because I'm gay, so I get to be part of like groups representing gay Asian men. I say, hold on for a second, I'm gay, but I know nothing about gay men in my community. I say, stop it.
Good.
I'm gay, but that's it. Like I'm so out of the communities, like I can't. I don't even know the issues they're facing. I say, to be honest, I say, like, so stop asking me into that space. I know nothing. I just be gay. That's it. Okay.
Because that's what it is, isn't it? It's about being really authentic. And that's what, that's what I always remember from our time at counties together in the interagency. You've just come with this beautiful authenticity, and you came into one of my postgrad classes, I remember, and talking out there, and you're just so authentic and genuine.
Oh, thank you, Kerri.
And you've just, you just kind of said it right there of, part of my intersectionality is here, but that doesn't mean I'm going to become the leading expert, and I'm not going to position myself off the whānau to do.
No. It would be so wrong. Oh my God. I thought a gay Asian library would be a disaster.
It's values-based leadership, my friend.
But Kerri, I really love, our corridor, because it touched on so many multiple layers, isn't that?
Yeah.
And I also felt like talking to you, there's still so much more that we can talk about, because this is just a very like a quick overview of what you have done and achieved. But I mean, what I really respect and admire about it is, it's not an easy journey. Let's face it. Like it can be quite alone, but you're still fighting the fight. And I can see that you just getting better at it, because essentially you're saying to yourself, it's like, how can I be more effective of what I'm doing?
Yeah. Yeah, there's that sort of maturing, I think, of, I'm not a single mama anymore trying to raise 3 children, where it's like, oh gosh, I can't go all 100% hard out because if I lose my job, how do my kids? So, I don't, and not to say that I ever conformed because I just naturally can't. It's why I ended up having to leave school was because I just could not conform. So I don't sit well in systems, but there's also a kind of, I guess, when you've been around for a little while and there's a few things you can do and you've kind of resigned yourself to actually, if nobody ever hires me again, it won't be the first time in my life. What am I going to do? I've got a plan B of, there could be a local job around here. I could, try my hand at something else. That's what fuels my passion now. Is it's really lovely space to be in where I can say, actually, it doesn't matter whether you want me in here or not, because if you don't, you don't. I'll find another one to be able to do that. That, Tūmata was a real beautiful piece to be part of for that reason, because it was truly where we were left to be able to say what we wanted, to do what we wanted, and to know that finally, we could just call it and say it. And so for me, it's given me a lot more courage to go, actually, I don't care. I'll just keep doing what feels right and, what I believe is right. Because at the end of the day, then I sleep better at night than waking up in a job going, this doesn't feel comfortable. And I feel like I'm being compromised and I feel like I'm selling our whānau down the river. Like nobody wants to be in that position. Like it's really, sometimes we have to do things we don't like in order to survive, and to raise kids or whatever it might be. But it's not a nice space to be in.
I'm with you. That's my problem. I don't know how to confirm. I love what you, I love everything that you have done. I think especially in the healing space, bringing family together and also holding the energies and transform it into a art. If people don't understand what creating a safe space means, I don't think Pakeha really understood what it is. Because sometimes people holding all that energy and there's no way to let out, but able to have that space, feeling safe, heard. Sometimes it's not even through verbalization, isn't it? But through common understanding. And then the best thing is you have an artist who can transform that energy to a manifestation of a piece of art.
Yeah.
That is just magical. I think that is truly beautiful.
Yeah, it was really powerful. Like it was a really, I didn't get to see it on the screen, but I sat there when he'd put it on a little bit of a clip for me to have a look at to say, is this captured? And all I'd done was I'd actually sat there when I was recording it. I think I'd come back from Wellington. I was tired. I knew I had to send them a recording. And I'm talking a bit like this. And, I'd say to him, look, that's not my voice that I'm going to talk in, but I'm tired. So it sounds really tired. And there's a couple of waiata I sing the chorus of throughout that. And I'm like, and
Awesome.
I promise I'm going to sing like that through it. But when he sent back what he'd done, and apart from I had to actually turn myself off in the voice of it because it was horrendous. I sat there watching it, and I actually cried myself as well. Like I sat there and had a bit of a tangy, but it was a really healing one of, wow, it's the first time I feel that somebody's really heard my story,
Wow.
understood how it felt, just what he brought to life there was,
Wow.
it was so incredibly powerful. And it made it easier then to stand up and go, okay, I can do this. I've got my script in front of me. I'm just going to go and I'm just going to say it. It was because I knew what he was doing behind was somebody who was just able to, through his magic, bring it to life. Like it was pretty powerful. So we're super excited about being able to record it. And we've had some of the whānau from one of the DHBs talking about it would be great if we could use that with our whānau, because we talked about using it as a resource that, it's a way that the trust can actually generate some funds, is to be able to sell the story as a restore, or sell the tongue, I should say, and use it to influence some of that change, that if people really felt what it feels like in there and, to be in those spaces, then,
amazing.
to activate that humanness that we sometimes dull down when we're working in pressured systems like the health system is at the moment.
Yeah.
Dehumanize yourself when you're in a quite inhumane system, if you know what I mean. Like the system's one thing and the people in it are often just trying to do their best, but they're forced and enabled by some of the issues that are happening in the...
I know, stupid policy sometimes. I was like, but it's policy. I was like, who write it? Is it aliens who wrote it? We can't... I don't understand Pakeha will sometimes. Like, Jesus Christ, like what is wrong with these people? But anyway.
Love it. I love it. Yes.
But by the way, just before we finish, usually I have two questions to ask. First is there anything missing that you would like to share before we?
Just a big mihi to you, Ivan. You know, like these sorts of things aren't my comfy space, and every part of me was saying, no, 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 you can't go on this. But you have created such a beautiful safe space, and it's just been so lovely to connect with you and reconnect with you, I should say, and just appreciate the mahi that you were doing. And yeah, you've got such a very generous way of being, and you come across so beautifully. So it's been really lovely, yeah, much more comfortable than I thought it would be to come into this space. And you're just a gem. So that's kind of my
Oh,
gem. It's just a mihi to you, and just thank you for what you're doing. Like it's hugely appreciated. So kia
no,
ora.
I just want to say thank you. People just trust me. I don't know what to say. And to me, every story is a tonga, like what you say. I hold it so dearly. It's your life. You share it with me. And then a story I want it to be told.
Kia ora.
Because when I hear it, I was like, man, I can't sit here and pretend. Every bit is okay. It made me very fire up. So I was like, what the heck? So thank you for trusting me.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank
my
you.
friend. Just a quick sort of side note on that stuff with my nanny. The launch was actually on the day of my nana's passing, 26 years
Wow.
later. Yeah, it just worked out uncannily as that, and it wasn't until I went, yep, we'll do it on the Monday, and then I sat there and went, wow, that's the day Nana passed away, and where it
Wow.
was out at Kai Whatua Māori Marae out in Point Chevalier at Manawanui Services, which is near Carrington. And of course, my nanny was in there. So there was this, a couple of the whānau that were part of our Kai Whakamanawa rōpū went, man, your nanny must have, we felt someone in that space with you that, your
Wow.
nanny was in there that day. Because they talked
Wow.
about my waiata and they said, why doesn't Kerri sing like that all the time? So my nanny's with me. I think once as well as like, you didn't sound flat like you normally do, but there you go. So apparently if my waiata's on point, it's because my nanny,
Like your father, they're so honest.
there's nothing quite like it, hey?
No, I know. Yeah, they will always be so honest, like reminded you what you good and the bad, and it's like, well, but that's the love, isn't it? One
It
one
sure
last
is.
one last question usually I ask my guests about is what would you say to your younger self if you can ever go back?
Oh, it's a hard one. I think probably just like if I could go back to my younger self, it would have been to embrace the opportunity to learn Te Reo Māori. And like, Mum had asked me when I was a young kid if I wanted to go to Queen Vic, and I was, no, 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 no. I wish I had have taken that opportunity. I think that's the one thing. As any opportunity that comes your way, take it. Don't be afraid of because I don't know or whatever. These opportunities are presented for a reason. So I think that would be the one thing that I would say to myself is,
Wow,
lean into the opportunities. Don't let fear stop you.
thank you. I think that is a wisdom that I will take it with me as well. I
Mm.
think equally it applies to the situation of our life, isn't it?
Thank you. You are so honouring, and I just really appreciate you. So thank you, my friend.
Likewise, thank you so much